That's a new one. That's a new intro. Hey everybody, how y'all doing this evening? Um, Glad everyone could make it this evening. Looking forward to getting into tonight's subject. A little bit different than what we were doing last week. Um, might get us shut down again, might not. Don't know yet, but we'll definitely see. I hope everyone has had a great day, had a great weekend. I mean, great week so far. Um, but tonight we are going to be getting into um, some of the things that's been going on in the world dealing with the uh, fires over in Maui. Now, this is not going to be one of those talks in regards to, um, the conspiracy theory things and stuff like that. But what we want to do is we want to talk about uh, the things that kind of led up to it and why those things were important. And so, because of that, as we get into this, we're also going to show a couple of things. No videos tonight, but there are a couple of things I do want to pull up based on the things that happen over on that end, and just to talk us through um, some of the things that we're starting to see more and more of, and a lot of the things that we're seeing more and more of is slowly but surely, instead of being the abnormal, it's becoming the norm. And so we're going to touch on that briefly. And then after that, we're going to, kind of open it up for some Q&A if possible. And we will go from there. So with that being said, um, again, thanks everyone for being here tonight. And we're going to open up in a word of prayer. So, uh, Father God, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to come together to discuss the things that are happening out in the world, the things that are happening um, that will be worthy of us to have conversations about, so that we might be able to talk about these things and be able to know what's been going on, to be ever mindful of things, and also the way that the enemy's playbook is how strong it is. And just thank you for just all of these many blessings that you bestowed upon us and allowing us to be able to be here tonight, uh, and to be able to have these discussions. We just ask that you would be with those who are traveling, uh, watch over and keep them as they're on the roads, Lord. And just pray for their safe return home. And just thank you just for being who you are. And we just love you, and we give you all the praise and honor and glory in your son Jesus' name. Amen. So, with that being said, uh-oh, let's see if I can do this. 1 second. My screen is playing a trick on me real quick. Give me 1 second here. I don't know why it's doing that, but it is weird. So, all right, that's better. Hey, shout out Double R. How you doing? So tonight, as I said, we're going to be discussing um, things that were happening over in Maui, and in that discussion of the things that are happening over in Maui, like I said, it's not. We're not going to be talking about. I've seen everything that Maui was hit with energy weapons, and it was being destroyed because of you know things wanting to be taken over and all of this other stuff. Is there truth to some of that stuff? Possibly. Anything's possible nowadays. I mean, we just went through a thing that, for lack of better terms, they locked people down for what was the equivalent of, in many cases, a cross between a real bad flu and a hyper chest cold. So anything can happen, right? But that's not what we're talking about tonight. And so one of the things that I want to get into tonight is when we start talking about Maui, it's how did this happen? How did this get here so fast? How did that take off the way that it did? And one of the things that you come to see is that it got that way over time. This wasn't just, this was a quote unquote um, culmination of events that was based on everything from ineptitude to ignorance to uh, bad policy to incompetence. I mean, the whole 9 yards behind the whole thing was just horrible. And you get to see these things, and but you also get to see what happens when the evil nature of man uh, begins to come to the forefront, if you will. And so, and the reason why I'm saying that is because, like I said, we're going to touch on a couple of these things, and it's going to be crazy, right? The way we're going to do it, and we're going to start you off. This actually came out last year. Now, everything that I pulled up here was pulled up from local things within Hawaii. I didn't want to go too far into the uh, massive amounts of, speculations and everything else. I wanted to bring in things that were um, pertinent to exactly what was going on there at the time, right? And so, the first thing that I'm going to bring up, and the reason why I'm bringing up, because this shows a pattern. This shows a pattern of what we're bringing in right now, and so it goes to build on that pattern that this is not just a particular piece in regards to um, some just one off, and that these things just happen, just so happen to happen, just by the skin of your teeth, pretty much, right? So here's what we're going. So we're basically going. I'm going to show this real quick, and it is. See if I can pull that up real quick. So this is going to be one of those things that um, it's really not going to have. Like I said, we're not going to be doing a lot of quote unquote um, videos, if you will, on a lot of this, right? I'm trying to see if I can actually pull these things in. And now my phone decides to it's going to jump off the page for that. All right. So I'm going to see if I can actually bring these into these pieces too as well. Hold on one second. I don't think I can. Yeah, I don't think that'll. Give me 1 second, you guys. I apologize. I thought I had this one um, exactly where I needed to have it, and apparently I didn't. So just bear with me. And in the process, um, we're going to talk about exactly what we've about this first thing that I'm about to show you. And this has to do, again, this happened last year. Now, keep in mind, the thing that happened technically, this had no, and I'm stating this right off the bat, right? Technically, this had no, and I repeat, no bearing on the wildfires. This had no bearing on the wildfires. But what you'll start to see is you start to see um, these things in regards to when I said earlier with the talking about the incompetence, and we're talking about the um, pieces of ineptitude about what was going on, right? And here's the deal: before anyone says anything, this has nothing to do with race at all. the majority of people who were in charge were native people to that area. These were not people that lived outside of these areas. These were not people who were quote unquote, some foreign government, CEO white person. That's like some people like to say, somebody holding us down. Had nothing to do. These people are all local to the area. Now, there's only one difference. A lot of these people that you're going to see are also leftists. So, with that being said, so the first thing we're going to pull up, and so that everybody can see, and I can do it now, is this video right here. And it's not really a video, but it's a it's from the Hawaii News Now is where it's from. And when you look at it, the story says former Maui DWS employee says he was fired for pointing out contamination concerns. So, all right, so what was the contamination concern? Well, when you go and you read into this article here, and I'm just going to give a highlight on it, this guy here was in charge of, was one of the people that were that did the water treatment plants for Maui. In some kind of way, as it says right here, he said the operator was cleaning, and it's compact. It says, so I'll read it from the jump. It says, 1 year after filing a whistleblower lawsuit against Maui County, a former Department of Water Supply employee is still fighting for his job back. It said Ashley Hook's lawsuit claims he was retaliated against and unlawfully fired in 2020 after he alerted the state that Maui's largest surface water treatment facility had been contaminated. It says the operator was cleaning it with acid and chemicals, which is proper practice, but he made the mistake of opening the wrong valve and dumped a whole bunch of acid and all the stuff we were filtering out of the water back into the drinking water. Hook said supervisors were notified that an uncertain amount of acid went into the Kamole water treatment facility. The facility services Maka'ao, Pokalani, Halamele, and Haku. Hook said the supervisors failed to take the issue seriously, and he was bullied when he questioned them. Like, don't you dare talk about this. Now, he said, Hook said that after no action was taken for more than a month, he alerted the State Department of Health Safe Drinking Water Branch. A lot of us thought it was very unethical, he said. The lawsuit states a violation letter was issued to the county, and the public was subsequently notified about the water contamination. It said, had Mr. Hooks not blown the whistle and contacted the Department of Health, nobody in the general public, including myself, would have ever known that the water had been contaminated, said Hooks' attorney, Andrew Daisuke Stewart. And Hooks was fired 1 month later. So then it starts talking about everything else. So what I'm trying to show here is the precedent of what we're talking about, right? So this guy basically did everything that he was supposed to do. He went up to the people that were in charge. He told them exactly what was going on, how the water got contaminated, and hey, what can we do? We probably need to do some things to stop this, blah, 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 blah. They basically told him to sit down and shut up. But he understood the detrimental effects that would have been caused with people drinking this water. So now keep in mind that people were drinking this water for a month and nothing was done. So who knows what sickness they've gotten, what kind of things have been applied to them and everything else. So he went ahead and went over their heads to the Department of Health, and hence the trickle down of things that happened. Was there anything wrong than what he did? No. What did he do? He pissed off the wrong people, which caused him to be blacklisted and fired for the most part. So he's fighting for his job and everything else. But that's a level of corruption. What should have happened is that the people, once he made this known, the people that's in charge should have put all of the quote unquote areas in regards to hazmat and everything else into this, to put this into a position of what? Of quote unquote rescue for the public, right? They should have reran the water, stopped everything that was going, refiltered everything through. Would it have cost time and money? Yes, it would have been. But it's not like it was their money, right? This is the money that the people pay in taxes to help keep these things open, and that's supposed to help keep them safe. So all of these things are part of it. And so because of that, we now get to look, and we start getting into this whole thing with that we saw with Maui, right? And that's the part that really and truly is considered to be ridiculous. And so we'll pull up, let me pull this up real quick. So there's two spots I want to get to. I want to talk about, exactly the amount of damage that did happen. And then we're going to start talking about a few things in regards to those who helped to cause this issue. Now, things that I have seen, the things that I've read and taken into consideration with a lot of these things that have gone on during this time have been very, very cringe in many ways. I mean, it's been very much so cringy in regards to the things that I've seen. And you ask the question, well, how did it get there, right? And the problem is it got there because of quote unquote people's belief. And that goes to show you that we talk about it here all the time. We say what? There's no one, and I repeat that there is no one that is literally not going to worship something. Everyone's going to worship one thing or the other. Everyone's going to believe by faith something. And so why do I say that? Because it is the truth. Atheists believe what they believe, not by facts, but by faith, because they have no rhyme and or reason, right? They will use specific logic and they will use specific reason for sure, yes. But a lot of the stuff that they believe is on faith. And so because of that, and that being a quote unquote thing, there we go. Hoping that my machine doesn't want to dial me right now. But because that's a quote unquote thing in that regards, you have to take, there's a lot of things that you have to take, even for them, on faith. You have to. And so because of that, you now get into a lot of the things that we're going to talk about here in a few seconds, which is the fact of, oh, hey, Mama B, congrats, thanks for showing. But one of the things that we want to see in this, you're going to see how these people's thought process and their beliefs were critical cogs in regards to the things that went on, right? So let's stop down and let's look at this for Reuters, right? So Reuters comes in. Let's see here. There you go. So we have this thing with Reuters right now. And so Reuters is one of the main, if you don't know, and if you know, you know. But Reuters is one of the main areas as far as news is concerned. It's known pretty much all over the place. And it's similar to, Associated Press, right? But one of the guys drops an article and they basically timed it up under climate change. But the fact of the matter is really not about the climate change. We're going to see that too. So one of the things it says is that the fires were started the night of August 8th, wreaked widespread destruction in Lahaina, the city of about 13,000 people on northwestern Maui, was once a whaling center in the Hawaiian Kingdom's capital and now draws 2 million tourists a year. Cadaver dogs and rescue workers have searched 85% of Lahaina's charred ruins for victims, and officials said it was likely the number of dead would rise. Now, right now, it's saying that there are 115 people that have died as of now, but they're saying there's over 1,000 missing. Now, based on some of the things that I've read, and the amount of people who they found, families that were huddled together in their homes and underneath things, and that were basically, they were burned alive. God willing, they did not die from the fire, but from the smoke, inhalation, right? It would be better for that, whereby than to be burned alive. Wish none of it would have happened, but still, the things that happen with it is, so they don't know how many people. But one person that I saw, who was one of those people that were, I guess one of those, not the scientists, but one of the people that was in charge of one of the disaster areas, they were saying that they expect to find about 500 to 600 people, right? So it said how much damage had the fires caused. They destroyed or damaged more than 2,200 buildings. 86% of them were residential, according to damage assessment maps. And the University of Hawaii Pacific Disaster Center and Maui Emergency Management Agency, said the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and PDC estimate will cost $5.5 billion to rebuild Lahaina. It said FEMA has approved more than $7 million in assistance to more than 2,200 households. Now think about this for a second. Put a pin in that. They've only approved $7 million in assistance for 2,200 households. That is not a lot of money. That is not a lot of money, especially with the cost of living and the cost of materials there. It is very, very piss poor. So they started talking about that. But this is the part that was key right here. Now, some Maui residents have questioned whether more could have been done to alert them. It said witnesses said they had little warning, describing their terror as the blaze destroyed Lahaina, and in what seemed like minutes, some people dove into the Pacific Ocean to escape. Sirens stationed around the island intended to warn of impending natural disasters never sounded, and widespread power and cellular outages hampered forms of alerting. Put a pin in that. Then it says Hawaii Governor Josh Green vowed on Sunday to investigate the response and emergency notification system. They said, how did it start? Now, at this point in time, they said the causes of the fires have not been determined. The National Weather Service had issued warnings for the Hawaiian Islands for high winds and dry weather, conditions ripe for wildfires. Now, it says in Hawaii, less than 1% of fires are due to natural causes, according to Elizabeth Pickett, co-executive director of the Hawaii Wildlife Management Organization. The Hawaiian Islands have 6 active volcanoes, including one on Maui. And then it says the spread of flammable, non-native grasses in areas of former farmland and forests have created large amounts of small, easily ignited materials that increase the risk and severity of fire. Now, keep a pin, put a pin in that. Okay, so here's why I'm saying this. Oh, then Hawaiian Electric, that's another thing. This becomes, like I said, this is policy and incompetence of people and blatant disregard and neglect. Okay, this is what a lot of this is. So why did I'm saying all these things? I'm like, put a pin in this, put a pin in this. Why? Because now we're going to start touching on some of this stuff, right? Notice what it says. So when you start going into what happened in this flammable non-native grasses and stuff like this that it's talking about and everything else, this was all done because this has been a pretty hot year around pretty much around the globe. It's been a pretty hot year this year. Now, why has it been a pretty hot year this year? Well, that's a whole nother story, and that's another thing we can look into at another time. You have the things that people have talked about in regards to global weather manipulation, with all of the things that revolve the aluminum dusting, things that are talking about the things that have been put in the air for chemtrails to modify and supposedly help to combat climate change and all these things. Of course, they have done the things that they are using has been proven to so far to cause the outcome that they did not expect, right? Including storms and things that have grown up out of nowhere because of things for weather manipulation. You will have some that will say no, you will have some that will say yes to this. It is starting to slowly be proven that the yeses are starting to have it. But anyway, the natural grass, the non-native grasses and all the stuff that they're talking about, California has a lot of the same issues. You have a twofold problem. Both areas are run by what are called leftists, very high environmentalists, very high in public policies and things in regards to taking over, right? The doing things to make things look a certain way, and water conservation this and water conservation that, and we don't want to hurt. Well, you need to clean up some of this stuff or create fire breaks, like for example in California. Well, we can't touch this because the native frog lives here. Or so it's the variance of animal life and nature and husbandry over the safety of people, right? Well, this is what you wind up having. So you had a lot of different grasses and things that were in that area that are not native, but has a certain pleasing aesthetic to it, that were allowed to, in some cases, run unchecked and not taken care of. So it was made to look like it was untouched by man in many ways. And so that's great if you have your average rainfall falling like it should, but on times where it's not, and you have a storm coming in that can bring issues, then you run around and you have problems, and you now basically have effectively laid the groundwork for a possible disaster, right? So this was the beginning of a lot of this. Now, with that being said, did it have to come to this where this place burned to the ground? And the answer is no. So now we go back to why didn't the siren sound, right? In the city of this many people, how come the sirens didn't sound? And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about why the sirens didn't sound. And the sirens didn't sound mainly because of the again, the incompetence of a person who was quote unquote in charge, right? And in this incompetence that we see from a site called, we're going to be pulling this up from a site called Town Home. And one of the things that we're going to see is that the amount of incompetence that's going to reside around this is really and truly ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. So not too long after the fires took place and the devastation was made known, what you wind up having is you see that the guy that was in charge of these things, right? He quit. He resigned. And so he was the guy that was supposed to be in charge of making sure that the sirens would have gone off. And the guy's name was Herman Andaya or Andaya. And this guy here is, I can honestly say, this guy here was a piece of work. I mean, a big piece of work. But one of the things that he says, and I'm gonna pull this up real quick. Now, notice what he says, and I'll play the video too, and let you guys hear it for yourselves here in a second. But this is what the guy said, just in the based on what's going on. He said, it says the head of Maui's emergency management agency asserted on Wednesday that he has no regrets about failing to activate warning sirens as the apocalyptic wildfires swept through the island, despite claims the system could have saved hundreds of lives. Chief Herman Andaya defended his decision to only send out alerts via mobile devices. Now, keep in mind that during this time, they were dealing with problems with cellular service, as we mentioned before, and also power. We're going to talk about that too. Via mobile devices, radio, and television, and the county's opt-in resident alert system after his experience and qualifications for the lofty position were called into question during a press conference held by the governor. It says, Andaya said that the blaring sirens are typically reserved for tsunami warnings and that Hawaiians are trained to seek higher ground when they are set off. That would have been toward the fast-moving inferno that killed 110 people. Had we sounded the sirens that night, we're afraid that people would have gotten Meoka, means toward the mountains, and if that was the case, then they would have gone into the fire, and Dahlia said. I should also note that there are no sirens, Meoka, are on the mountainside where the fires were spreading down. So even if we sounded the sirens, we would have not have saved those people out there on the mountainside. Now, keep in mind, that sounds like that's a plausible argument, but here's the deal. People could see fire outside their house. When you go and you look at all of those people that were out there, people could have seen fires coming from the house and would have known that this was very serious, right? So you had this knucklehead come in, and he's like, and he, and this is the thing where he says that probably brings, and this is another part of the article, that this probably brings zero comfort to the families of the victims, where he claimed he has the experience and Daya doesn't. This shambolic response shows he is incapable of proper communication and competent disaster management. People died, sir, saying essentially that they would have died anyway in a situation like this should be unrecoverable. Someone other than the president is ahead of their skis here. Then it says also, what in the hell is this? And the what in the hell is this portion of the situation comes in the form of the guy who was in charge of the water, right? So let me go ahead and play this real quick, so you can hear this guy in his own words, because I can tell you right now that this cat here, I'm sorry, that this cat here is ridiculous. This guy here is just ridiculous. This is people who don't deserve the positions that they are in, mainly because with thoughts and processes like this guy is wicked. So,
do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not. And the reason why, and
so many people said they could have been saved if they had time to escape. Had a siren gone off, they would have known that there was a crisis emerging. And as we know, so many bodies were found in the ground.
Do you want him to give you the answer, or do you want to give? Well, then let him finish. Let him finish his answer.
Sorry, there's a lot of people.
Well, you're talking and you're not letting him talk.
Now, keep in mind, that's his buddy, right? That's his buddy. His buddy's trying to take up for him because his buddy knows he didn't do right. His buddy knows he did not do right. But fact of the matter is, he is trying to show support behind his boy. And I understand, he's willing to not let his boy fall on that sword. So he's kind of standing up on it. But fact of the matter is, this was inexcusable. It really was.
If you want to talk, come up here.
I'm ready for the answer.
Then wait.
the sirens, as I had mentioned earlier, is used primarily for tsunamis. And that's the reason why many of them are found, almost all of them are found on the coastline. The public is trained to seek higher ground in the event that the siren is sounded. In fact, on the website of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, the following guideline is provided. If you are in a low-lying area near the coastline, evacuate to high grounds, inland or vertically to the fourth floor and higher of a concrete building. Alerts may also come in the form of a wireless emergency alert. Had we sounded the siren that night, we're afraid that people would have gone Malka.
Now, again, as I read earlier, that means they would have gone into the mountains. But here's the kicker. The fire was coming from the mountains. If they would have sounded the sirens, the people would have been able to see exactly what was going on and would have been able to flee the city because they would have saw the fire coming toward the city. There was many different clips and things that I saw of people at the time, just basically they saw fire in the distance, but what they didn't see was the severity of the fire. And so you had people that were trying to basically just like wet the walls of their house and wet the ceiling and stuff like that. They didn't know how bad it was. We'll let him continue.
If that was the case, then they would have gone into the fire. And so that is the reason why our protocol has been to use WEA and EAS. By the way, I should also note that there are no sirens, Malka, or on the mountainside where the fire was spreading down. So even if we sounded the siren, it would not have saved those people on the mountainside.
So he's saying it wouldn't have saved the people on the mountainside. No, but the people on the mountainside would have known that there was a problem and they needed to get out. That's right. Exactly. Double R hit it nail on the head. Pride. Right. He's trying to justify, and here's the deal. This is what people who are leftists do. They think that the common man has no common sense. So that what they will do is they will put policies in place to try to take the place of common sense. And yet and still it alleviates the people of responsibility for their own lives. So that when disasters strike, just like this, they say what? Oh, well, we don't know what we could have done. Well, if we would have sounded the alarm, we would have ran the sirens. Now, keep in mind, there was already a storm happening. Another thing he fails to leave out. There was already a storm and high winds happening. If he would have sounded the alarms, well, it would have triggered people to look. They would have seen fires coming out of the mountain. They could have moved to safety. Yet still, no bueno. So, that guy. So, in his eyes, I did nothing wrong. Dude, you cost people their lives. You cost people their lives. Again, ignorance, incompetence, right? Leftist policies. But we're not done yet. We're not done yet. So now we get to, oh boy, we get to the other guy. And this guy, oh my gosh, this guy here was a piece of work. Because there was another guy that was there. And there was another guy. You've probably seen this guy. But he's another guy that was there who decided that, hey, yeah, we got water and stuff that needs to go out to the people. Yeah, there's alarm system that wasn't triggered and everything else. And we talked about that, right? But wait a minute. Hold up a second. There's someone else. There's someone else. And the someone else is this guy here. This guy here was in charge of the water. Now, this guy here, I'm gonna let him say it in his own words about what he's about. Okay. I'm gonna let you see. He's gonna say it all for himself about what he's all about. Listen to this.
The commission is responsible per our authorizing statute to protect and manage all water resources in the state. One Water is like taking it and looking at it from a holistic system perspective. And that's not any different than how Hawaiians traditionally managed water. You know, in essence, we treated Native Hawaiians treated water as one of the earthly manifestations of a god and a kua kane. And so that reverence for a resource and that reciprocity in relationship was something that was really, really important to our worldview and well-being, right? And living in an island, isolated from other, civilizations. And so I think where it shifted to today or over time is that we've become used to looking at water as like something which we use and not necessarily something that we revere as that thing that gives us life, right? I mean, to me, it's a shift in value set. And, if we can start to really look at how we as humans in an island can reconnect to that traditional value set. So really my motto is always like, let water connect us and not divide us. Like we can share it, but it requires true conversations about equity.
Now, understand what this guy is saying. Understand what this guy is saying. This is the guy, he did not release the water because he didn't think it was that bad. When you go back and you look at all of the transcripts and everything else about how this all went down, he didn't think the situation was that bad. And because they were trying to do moratoriums on water and they were trying to set things up on how much water people could use and everything else, he refused to open up the water supply so that people could help and that areas could help take out the fire and protect themselves and get ways where they can escape. He didn't do that. So now, so because of that and his worship of water, yes, yeah, they don't. That's exactly why I was saying what I was saying. It is the incompetence. Now, here's the deal. This guy here, when you look at his background, he had no experience doing this job. Never. He is the deputy director of the Land and natural resources. He had no experience doing this job. He knew nothing about it. But because of who he worked for before and the people that he knew, he got this position. He got this position. And so because of that, lots of people passed away. And the fact of the matter is, when you're worried, you know, even when they got into, you know, look into it, even quote unquote, the New York Post, as leftist as they come, when it comes down to the news is concerned and reporting news related items and articles, right? They lean toward the left for the most part. Even they had to say, nah, bro, no, we can't rock with you with this. He waited for more than 5 hours to release water during the wildfires. Think about that. Before he signed off to release the water on the wildfires, he's sitting there talking about equity and this and equity and that and everything else. They don't care, man. They don't care. These people here don't care. It is all about doing exactly what they talking about. It's all about setting things up so that we can be diverse, setting everything else because of equity, setting things up, and the average person can go die. Oh yeah, I believe you, bro. I believe you. Jedi Master said, I work in law enforcement and things are crazy out here. Yeah, they're crazy. But it's crazy. In that craziness, in that chaos, trust me, it's still all organized. It's still all organized. So what if all of these people die and all of these things go down? So what if this is what the place looks like now? So what if it looks like this? So what? Now you got a happy smiling face. He alive. He did his part. But look at that. Look at that. To the ground. To the ground. Now here's the key. Now listen to this. Did he die? No. Did he lose his job? No. Manuel was transferred to another position within the Department of Land and Natural Resources, according to the Honolulu Civil Beat, which first reported the story of the delay. The West Maui Land Company said in August 10th letter to Manuel that his commission refused its request to divert streams to fill landowners' reservoirs in the hard-hit Lahaina area until the wildfires raged out of control. Sources told Honolulu Civil Beat that Manuel had asked the company to consult with a local farmer about the impact of water diversion before approving their request. So this thing is happening. It hasn't gotten to the hallmark of hugeness that it was, but there were wildfires happening at the time. And he's telling them they need to go talk to a local farmer before we can see about having that done. Tell me what the local farmer say. If the local farmer say it's good, that's good. Incompetence. Yeah, there's not one excuse no one can give to this wildfire. Exactly. There's none. Because wait, there's more. Well, how do we know there's more? Because this wasn't the only portion that ran into it. Also, in this whole situation, we come to find out And again, when I say incompetence, negligence, ineptitude, wickedness, well, there's a reason for that. Because now we get to see that now they're also going to sue. Maui County is out to sue, as we see here, HECO, which stands for the Hawaiian Electric Company. The Hawaiian Electric Company, during times of high winds and things of that nature, one of the things that they were supposed to do was to cut power in the remote areas so that things didn't get so that the power lines and stuff, if they were to fall or whatever else, did not cause any damage or hurt anyone in specific areas. What do we find out is they refuse to do it. So, as it states, Maui County filed suit Thursday against Hawaiian Electric, alleging the utility caused the Lahaina wildfire and failed to take appropriate action to maintain the grid. It is the latest suit against Hawaiian Electric connected to the blaze, now the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century, but a new wrinkle in the story given that previously the utility had only faced litigation from residents for its operation before, during, and after the blaze. It says, John Fitz, one of several attorneys representing the county in the civil suit, says investigators have already documented evidence that the ultimate cause and origin of fires from a legal and factual standpoint is lines and phases that were slapping on the ground. So it says Fitz says a de-energization program should have been in place to cut off power, and as HECO should have taken more action to prepare its equipment with approaching powerful winds. Not only should these type of poles and lines and equipment and insulators all withstand these large wind events, which they get a lot, but there is now a standard in the investor-owned utility world to de-energize or power down lines in the aftermath of these high wind events because fires can be started. In other words, that when these lines and these power poles break, fall, the lines get pulled out, the poles fall, especially on these older sides, those lines will come apart and they are live. So when they hit the ground and they're sparking all over the place, you've never seen a down power line, one of the things they tell you is that if you have a down power line, do not touch it. Do not go anywhere near it. Stay away and call the authorities. Why? Because if you ever seen a down power line, that thing jumps around, and this is not something off of TV. I have seen it in real life. Those down power lines will jump around, especially if they run in a lot of current. They will jump around and run around like they are alive, because technically they are. And when it hits you, you'll be lucky to be left standing, if not dead. So for those lines to fall, and the possibility of that, because they did find down power lines where they had the elements of where these things were started. Matter of fact, you saw people that were filming outside of their homes in certain areas were seeing these flashing lights that were basically, from what they were saying, were lines that were going down in the high winds and were hitting the ground, basically making it look like it was being struck by light. So think about this. Dry grass. I mean, it's a beautiful bucket perfect storm of ineptitude, negligence, and evil in many shape, forms, and fashion. And this is what you have. Now, this is what happened in Maui. Well, it's part of the United States, right? This is all part of the United States, and this is all we care about, right? But here's what you fail. Here's what most people fail to understand, right? And I'm gonna have to go ahead and tag this too. there were also, well, I need to say this too. What was so funny is we don't have time to stop the we don't have time to stop the fires, but it's amazing, and this is where the evil portion comes in, because now you have to say that there was something else going on that was more than what meets the eye. Well, how do I say that? Because one of the things that has not been mentioned much on the news, but was reported in the Associated Press, is that there were barricades on the main roads leaving the island. Why were there barricades for people leaving, trying to get out and leave? You had certain people that could not get out. And I repeat, think about this for a second. I'm not saying that there's quote unquote something conspiracy, blah, blah, but it is what it is, and the facts are the facts. As flames tore through a West Maui neighborhood, car after car fleeing residents headed for the only paved road out of town in a desperate race for safety, and car after car was turned back toward the rapidly spreading wildfire by a barricade blocking access to Highway 30. Keep in mind, the only is blocking access to only 30. This was the only paved road out of town. It said one family swerved around the barricade and was safe in a nearby town 48 minutes later. Another drove their four-wheel drive car down a dirt road to escape. One man took a dirt road uphill, climbed above the fire, and watched as Lahaina burned. He later picked his way through the flames, smoke, and rubble to pull survivors to safety. But dozens of others found themselves caught in a hellscape. Their cars jammed together on a narrow road surrounded by flames on three sides and the rocky ocean waves on the fourth. Some died in their cars while others tried to run to safety. Exactly. That's why I said with all of the chaos that they showed and all of the crazy stuff that's going on, it does seem like it was strangely organized, don't it? Exactly. Organized chaos, sir. I could see from the bypass that people were stuck on the balcony, so I went down and checked it out, said Kikoa Lansford, who made several trips into town to look for survivors. What he found was horrible. Lansford said, with dead bodies and flames like a hellish movie scene, and I could see that people were on fire, and the fire was just being stoked by the winds and being pushed toward the homes. The road closures, some because of fire, some because of down power lines, contribute to make historic Lahaina the site of the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. But there were many more problems that day, and in some ways, the disaster began long before the fire started. Remember, I talked about some of that earlier. Then they kind of give a rundown timeline where it says the flash drought in the region provided plenty of kindling, and Hurricane Dora brought strong winds to Maui as it passed roughly 500 miles south of the Hawaiian island chain. These winds downed at least 30 power poles in West Maui, and Hawaiian Electric had no procedure in place for turning off the grid. Common practice in other fire-prone states. Video shot by Lahaina residents shown a down power line setting dry grass alight, possibly revealing the start of the larger fire. Now, here's the key. Remember what I said earlier when I said put a pin in this this grass that was like kind of like out of the ordinary grass that was sitting in there. Remember I was saying about that? Well, this is where this all comes into play. Here's what normally happens in areas that know about drought and will do things with drought. It goes like this. When there are drought conditions, one of the things you don't want is to have a wildfire. So the one thing that most areas will do, especially high populated areas, they will send all of their maintenance people out and they will cut things down as low as it can go. Why is that? Even if it catches, even though it catches, it hasn't worked itself up. Even with high winds, it wouldn't have worked itself up into a frenzy enough to be able to consume large amounts of areas. Not only that, but if they would have done exactly what I'm saying right now, and also dug areas, bulldozed, did a one of those earth movers or whatever else, and literally came in and cut around the massive areas that were dry to leave what would have created a break, right? All of a sudden, now you would have had the less ability for things to not only catch fire with the high winds and the power lines, but it would have reduced the damage dramatically. You would have probably had very little loss of life, but that requires you to be prepared. That would have required you to be prepared. It would have required people to do their freaking jobs instead of caring about how water is like a god and how we all need to be surviving equity and all of this other foolishness that most places and most people run around with these leftist programs. You would have had people saying, hey, look, this is a possibility of danger. I live here, you live here. This is what needs to happen so that we can literally minimize any possible danger. If they would have done that around the town, the fires, even if the fires come down the mountain, it would have stopped at what would have been those breaks. This would have stopped. So you would have had less grass for it to eat because of no fuel. And then you would have got to a place where there was nothing left. It would have been easily contained. But what did they do? We need to look a certain way. We wanted to look more native. We wanted to do this. We wanted to do that. And now what do you get? You wind up getting death and destruction because what you did was foolishness. And it cost people their lives. Now, ask the question. Why was there a barricade, though? They didn't say that power lines were in the road going on the main road out. They didn't say. They said it was a barricade. Was it a barricade of cars? Was it a barricade? Barricade says, I put something there to stop you from doing this. You had others that were like, yeah, screw this, I'm out. We'll go any means necessary. We'll go around. Right. So we say this and we like, again, it's amazing the way these things are rolling. It's amazing. But last but not least, in this whole debacle, check this out. And I want you guys to hear this because this is not me saying this. This is one of the quote unquote respected spots within journalism, if you will, out of the Los Angeles Times. Because see, not during that time, it was not just Hawaii that was having problems. It was not just Hawaii. It was also, yeah, I'll turn it off. So, yeah, it also happened in Canada. We saw that earlier in the year. Canada, and how Canada and the stuff that happened with Canada went all the way down into the U.S. and choked out parts of the U.S. on the eastern seaboard. But here's what everybody else doesn't think about, too. Greece was happening during this time. Greece was having this problem, too, about the same time as Hawaii. I think they might have been like a week before, maybe a couple of weeks before. But think about this for a second. Think about it. Canada, 30 million acres of boreal forest burned down. 30 million acres. That's a ton. That's a ton. In Rhodes, Greece, they kind of ran into the same thing that they ran into with whatchamacallit over in Hawaii. It was triple digit temperatures. Really don't get the triple digit that much there. But it wound up getting this 1 year of this triple digit. And what did it do? The flames fed on overgrown forests amid triple digit temperatures threatening historic villages. If you go and you look at what happened with over there in Rhodes, you had people literally trying to get out. You had people trying to leave. You had people trying to move around, trying to get up out of there, taking ferries out, all of this other stuff. Some people went and got on their boats and was out. You had people being evacuated. Another touristy area, right? But no, I'm gonna read this portion of what these people are saying. And you had these people sitting up here talking about all of this stuff about global warming and everything else like they normally do. And so it's, here we go, right? They're saying all of these wildfires is global warming and everything else. Now keep out the issue of what I talked about before, which was what? They were playing around with the weather, putting this and running this chemtrail, seeding the clouds and doing all of these different things. They were doing all of this. This is not just a U.S. thing. This is actually happening globally. This is not conjecture about this, might be happening. No, this is happening, period, right? But notice what I'm gonna read what this one professor says. And because again, they were talking about this in regards to even what's happening in California, right? Let's see, make sure I got it to the right spot. Because it was, all this stuff. California states it says even in fire-prone California, miscalculations can occur. The state's ever larger blazes have been heavily linked to forest management policies that allow for a buildup of vegetation that act as fuel for fires. So if you don't know what happens within the areas of California, like what happened a couple of years back over in 2018, like they say it over here in Paradise, what happens is California does. So here's the deal. Nature cleans itself. On average, nature cleans itself. Hence, wildfires. Wildfires is nature's way of cleaning itself. Now, it can start any kind of way that you want it to start, right? It could be a lightning strike. It could be there was just enough water got hit by enough light that hit a blaze of grass, it hit a thing of grass and of dry grass, and it caught on fire because the water was so still and it acted like a mirror. Those things, nature takes care of itself. But the deal is, if you're going to live in nature and you know that these things are possible and probable, the deal is what you want to do is you want to make sure that those areas where people are going to reside, where then you don't let nature take care of itself in that way. What you do is you help nature take care of you. That's what you do. So you make sure that if there's a lot of overbrush and excess vegetation and everything else, you go in there and you cut that down. You go in there and you shave that down. You clean up around those trees. You do all of that stuff and get rid of all that brush, and or create a break, get a whole bunch of stuff piled up, create a break around it. Yeah, it's cost for something called manual labor, but you create the breaks around it. That's what you pay taxes for. The people in create the breaks around it, set it all on fire and let it burn. And once it burns, it has nowhere to go. So once it eats up the fuel that's been piled, it has nowhere to go. That's why they would normally do it in a clearing, create a break around it, big enough so it can't spread. You have people out there watching it. You'll have people out there with hoses. You have people with fire hoses and water and everything else just waiting. They'll even have that one spot on standby for that helicopter to come and drop that gush of water. But what they do is they let all of that burn, and once it burns, they stamp it all out, make sure it's all gone, and then they move on with their life's work. And you don't have to worry about wildfires. But when you have leftist policies that say, oh no, we can't touch nature, we can't do this, we can't do this, blah, 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 blah. Well, what winds up happening? Well, what winds up happening is when you do that, wildfires happen. Wildfires burn everything down. It weakens the soil because it destroys the trees and it destroys the thing. What's the other thing that California suffers from? Mudslides. Why do they suffer from mudslides? Because normally after wildfire season, remember, nature cleans itself. So normally after wildfire season, rain season comes. But here's the deal. There is nothing for the ground to stay stuck to. So you wind up getting mudslides. And when you wind up getting the mudslides, it takes off all of the excess. So what you see is, so again, what you wind up seeing is you see in all of these areas that are suffering from it. And what you wind up getting at, and I want to get with that to that article. And this person goes back to saying what I was saying for. So this is the name of this person was professor of the University of Arizona, Pine, said with reference to the Great Smoky Mountain wildfire complex of 2016, which caught locals by surprise when it sparked near Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It said the fire spread amid extraordinarily dry conditions and strong winds, ultimately killing 14 people and charring thousands of structures. The advancement of the wildfire and urban conflagration is being accelerated by global warming, Pine said, which is like putting the system on steroids. That's what they start off by saying, but here's the deal. But he added that worsening wildfires are also influenced by the ways in which humans interact with the landscape, manage agriculture, and organize their cities and economies, among other choices. Now, first he screams, oh, it's because of global warming. But then he says what? It was also influenced by what? The interaction between humans and the landscape, the way they manage the agriculture and organize their cities and economies. It doesn't make sense, is my point. The way that they come in and talk about this stuff, it doesn't make sense, because the one thing that they fail to understand, they want to say is global warming, this, that, and the third. But the fact of the matter is they can't help but come back and say what? Oh, yeah, it's probably this stuff. This plays a big part into this, right? And so when you look at this and you understand it, right, then all of a sudden you get to see that it doesn't make sense. Another professor, and this is the other one I wanted to read too, and it says, this person says this, and this is Lisa Benton Short, a professor of geography at George Washington University, who studies urban and environmental issues. Now, notice what she said, right? But while climate change played a role in some of those elements, the disaster was also compounded by government policies, communication failures, and other issues. So in other words, in all of climate change can say it's hot. It's a little bit hotter than it normally is. Or it's a little bit colder than it normally is. But notice what she says. She says climate change doesn't really explain the catastrophic nature of the fire. And for that, I think we have to look deeper at a variety of social, economic, and political factors that have exacerbated vulnerabilities. she said. Again. For all of the things that you want to say and blame climate change and everything else, based on what you see with your own two eyes, based on the things that I have read tonight, and based on the people that we have seen in this whole debacle, right? You see that for all of the climate change, it's people that causes the most damage. It's people. People did this. The lack of accountability, the major incompetence and ignorance, blatant disregard for what you see with your naked eyes is what caused this. And because that's what caused this, when people go and say the words like climate change, it's like the boogeyman that hides up under the bed that the kids are scared of. Climate change has been global warming. Climate change has been all these other things since way back in the 1970s when they first came out with that foolishness. By all intents and purposes, based on everything that they have said, the Earth should be now 80% underwater, and the only thing that should be left is is probably Northern Europe and Russia, and that's it. That's literally it, right? And that's why, when we look at this stuff, man, it's, that's why I love the book of Proverbs, right? The book of Proverbs is just so, it's just so real, man. It's the book of Proverbs is so real. It's not even funny because it says so many things that have to do with just once you read it, it's like, man, I know. It's like, I know this goes down. I know this happens, right? These things here, I see it, right? And so when you get to the I want to read up this because the scripture talks about what we have in here. And so one of the ones that and listen to what it says. And this is how you know this rolls from the top down, right? It says Proverbs 28:15. And it says this. It says, like a roaring lion or a charging bear is a wicked ruler over a helpless people. Think about that for a second. Like a roaring lion or a charging bear is a wicked ruler over a helpless people. Why? Because what a charging bear will do and what a roaring lion will do, the first thing they do is instill fear so that you try to what? Escape. The second thing they do is kill you. Micah 7:3. He's talking about the people of Israel. And this is when you look at a lot of these government people, we talk about the stuff that happens. When we talk about the stuff that happens, when we talk about the world system and things, how they do certain things, and you see it. And notice what it says. It says, Micah 7:3 says, both hands are skilled in doing evil. The rulers demand gifts, the judge accepts bribes, and the powerful dictate what they desire. They all conspire together. And that's why, so when I say, was it a conspiracy? Was it? Was it really a conspiracy? Was this really done in this way? Now you have to answer that question for yourself. Because now when you start seeing that they passed a law whereby in cases of extreme devastation and lack of a familiar or a family unit, the government can confiscate the land in Hawaii. That was passed before the fire. Then you start asking the question, well, where did that barricade come from to stop the people from leaving? Then you realize that the land of Maui was worth billions. Someone had to go. Someone had to hit the bricks. Makes no sense otherwise, though, does it? Makes no sense otherwise. But when you realize what this was all about, it makes more sense. Proverbs 29:12. If a ruler listens to lies, all his officials become wicked. Think about that one. Think about that one. When a ruler, when a king listens to lies, all his officials become wicked. We see that right now. We see that. All these things that are being pushed on political levels, government levels, federal, state, local. Stuff that gets pushed down, and because no one has the mental fortitude or testicular fortitude to stand and say no, right? Then all of a sudden they will do what is required of them, no matter how wicked. Oh, that's what I say. That's crazy. That's crazy. But yet and still we see that time and time again. We see it time and time again. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous increase, the people rejoice. But when a wicked man rules, the people groan. The book of Proverbs don't be playing, man. The book of Proverbs be calling it like it is. Book of Proverbs don't care. Proverbs 14:31. He who oppresses the poor taunts his maker, but he who is gracious to the needy honors him. Where do you think that those who did these things honor God? Or do you think they thumb their nose at God? We see it all the time. We see it all the time. This is why we are called to stand. This is why we are called to put ourselves in these positions to not only get information that we have gotten, but to also be those sirens, ring those bells to let people know the truth. Proverbs 31:8-9 says, open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all the unfortunate. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and defend the rights of the afflicted and needy. We're called to do that. Those who are righteous are called to do that. And we do it under the power of Christ. That's why we do that. But for those who don't care, right? they do everything opposite that, because a lot of them are only in it to line their own pockets. That one guy should have been put to pasture. He should have been put to pasture. There's no way that he should have ever had another job, but that's what they do. That's exactly what they do. They move in a way where they will take this guy who was completely inept at his job, cared nothing about people, more about the environment, and because he spouts and believes in nonsense versus being a champion for the people of his area, or they move him to another spot. We're going to move him to another spot. We're going to move him out of that visible spot of being a director, but we'll probably put him somewhere where he can affect policy. Why? Because he did what he was supposed to do. It would not be under the veil of possibility. We look up 3 years from now and find we look up and he's mayor of this new 15-minute city that's about to be dropped down in that area of what was once Lehana, Maui. Wouldn't be surprised. But these things are not happening just in Maui. They're happening all over the world. See a disaster, capitalize on the disaster, make the disaster worse, come back in and scoop up all of the underlying riches in that regard. People can die. So when you look at what this is really all about, when you understand this is for the neglect of the souls of men, but then it makes more sense now. Makes more sense. We can talk about weapons, and we can talk about conspiracy theory, this and that, and alien shot down this, and it was a government psyop that came. We can talk about we can say all this other stuff. But when you look at what it's really all about and everything else, it's pretty evident. It really is. So, with that being said, that is the end of tonight's session. By all means, I will throw the stream into the chat, and if you guys want, come on up. We'll have a conversation. If you have questions, you want to ask your question in the chat, or you want to ask your question here on the panel, then come on up, and we'll have these conversations for a little bit. Ran a little bit longer than what I thought I was going to tonight, but it's okay. Tomorrow's Friday, and Friday means weekend, so here we are. But with that being said, yeah, if you guys got any questions, something that you wanted to know about based on this, or something that you heard in concerning this, or something else that basically talks in the same vein, by all means, feel free to come up or put your question in the chat, and we'll hold tight for a little bit and see how it goes. So, but this is crazy. Oh yeah, by all means, hit the like, subscribe, put the bell notifications on, set it to all instead of just personalized or whatever, because I know they've been moving a lot of stuff around. You don't notice. That's why a lot of people don't. It's like I think it was Butterfly that was saying that she it said on hers that it was 10 o'clock, and it was like That doesn't make sense once you checked in. So, but yeah, they move stuff all around. But I think when you have it set to all, it like any updates or anything else, it will like trigger it and keep the new stuff out there for you. So you always see when, you know, Village goes live, you always will see it. You know, they try them. I told Bolo a while back, I already know we've been shadow banned on a lot of stuff. And I said, we're not even a big channel. They shadow banned stuff. I went looking one morning just to get to the, for the spot for the morning read. And it's like, they erased all of it off all of my subscriptions. I had to go back and add it. So yeah, it's crazy. But anything that's speaking truth, they don't want it to come out. They don't want it to come out. They want that stuff gone. So it is what it is. We continue to move forward. Oh yeah, it's crazy, man. I tell everybody all the time, if you are subscribed to certain channels or whatever else, you might want to go and check and see if you're getting a notification on them. Because if it's been changed to personalized, just know that you're probably not getting anything, or it'll be very sporadic that you'll get anything. But when it's set to all, then you get every time that person or that stream goes live, you will get that notification. But yeah, it's crazy. It is very crazy. But that's what happens. The power that be. So, well, if there is no questions or if there is nothing else, I guess we'll close out in the word of prayer. And get ready. Have you all noticed fake likes under YouTube videos too? I haven't. I think at one time I believe you could like buy likes at certain degrees, or they tagged it to like if you got like super chats or something. I think they tagged so many likes to that at one point in time. But I don't know. I hadn't seen anything about it. Oh, it's been happening all this week. Wow. I didn't know that, man. I did. So it must be something new to, well, and see the whole deal is that they've been getting geared up for a lot of different things, right? So like, for example, Canada is starts to push some of their mask mandate again. And like Rutgers here in the States, Rutgers University is trying to implement their mask mandate. They talking about the new EG5 variant of COVIDs that came out, and say it's in Canada right now, and they say it's going to be coming to the US, and they starting to implement mask policies and stuff again. And I'm like, man, if you don't if you don't understand the whole fool me once, fool me once, what is it? Fool me once, shame on me. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That's how it go. So like, yeah, that right there. Yeah, that's what that's all about. Anybody who's foolish enough to fall behind that stuff again, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say to you or about you when they've already said it themselves. They've said it themselves. So it's like, yeah, anybody who's willing to be locked down, anybody that's willing, you are going to see the ultimate. I believe something like that happened. Yeah, you're gonna see the ultimate black market rundown. That won't be a black market, because people are going to start going back to bartering. People will start going back to bartering. Hey man, what you got? You know, they either do it with cash, because they'll either do it with cash, credit, or they'll do it with bartering. One of the three. It's gonna happen. There will not, if they lock down, if they try to do the lockdown stuff, you will see a riot for real in the streets. And that might be what they want. so they can enforce a police state even faster. But yeah, but that's what's going to happen. People are not going to, people after what happened this past time and all the truth that came out, yeah, majority of people is not trying to, they're not trying to run behind that foolishness. Nope. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So oh, okay. That me see. All right. So, well, with that being said, guys, we're gonna close out the word of prayer and end it for the night. So, Father God, we just thank you for this day. We just thank you for just watching over us all and allow us to come here to discuss these things, Lord, to really be able to get into the crux of the matter, if you will. And we just thank you for giving us discernment, for giving us insight, Lord, for just allowing us to see things that in many ways are being hidden from most, but also to see things as they truly are. We just thank you and just bless and praise your holy name. And as we go about our evening, Lord, we just ask that you would just watch over us, keep us and bless us. And we just ask that you would just watch over those who are traveling, Lord, for those who are those truckers that are on the road, Lord, that are moving, back and forth throughout the states, and even some that are local. We just ask that you would just keep your hand on them and around them, Lord, for those who are law enforcement, first responders. We just ask that you would just keep your hand on them, watch over them, allow them to return home safely to their families. We just thank you for just all of the many blessings that you bestowed upon us and for everything that you've done, you're doing, and you're going to do with those that you purchased with your own precious blood. We just continue to give you honor and praise and glory, Lord, that's due to your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, oh, okay. So, I feel you. So, with that being said, guys, you guys have a great rest of your night. We look forward to seeing everyone for Testimony Friday tomorrow. And, God willing, we'll see everyone then. So, grace and peace to all. Have a great night. Talk to you guys later.